our delegation. God bless us.
The senator's out in the hall right now.
That's okay. Welcome to the Queen Anne's County Commissioners meeting. This is a public meeting that is being aired live on our local cable television station, QAC TV 7. This meeting is also being streamed live over the internet at www.qac.org/live. These media broadcasts provide county citizens an opportunity to watch and review our scheduled public sessions. We acknowledge your participation, and by attending, you acknowledge that this session is both recorded and aired. The scheduled agenda is available on the information table just outside of our meeting room. Press and public comment will be taken and is limited to 3 minutes per person. If you care to speak, you must sign the sheet on the information table outside. Comments longer than 3 minutes can be submitted in writing for the Commissioner's review. During the meeting, we would ask that you turn all electronic devices off and hold personal conversations outside of our meeting room. We will now stand and be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Commission President Jim Moran.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, with that being said, I want to thank our delegation for showing up. Senator Hershey, Delegate Ahrens, Delegate Jacobs, and Delegate Grice. So I guess I don't know if you all received the same document we have. So I guess we'll just start right at the top and we'll work our way down and for input and what we feel is pertinent and what you feel is pertinent and where we're going to go with this. So the first item is the residential sprinklers, and we got a request for a letter in support of this. And I believe that letter, if I'm not mistaken, was on public water and sewer?
Single family homes.
Single family public water and sewer, so rural houses that don't have it would be exempt from this. Is that the gist of that? So discussion? Anybody want to?
So I guess the big question is, the Rural County Coalition wants to take a position on this as well, and we're trying to establish what Queen Anne's is going to do. But one of the conversations we had with the Rural County Coalition about a month ago when this first surfaced was the fact that, is the will there to even change this, or is this going to be a political fight that we know is going nowhere right out of the gate? And I mean, I get it. We'll probably wind up supporting it because it is the Rural County Coalition. This is a rural county. But again, is the political will there to get this through, and is the political clout there to get it through?
I said to that. This comes as a request to the our group from the Eastern Shore delegation, and Wycomico County is where this really started to begin. And the delegate down there said, this is something that we've been fighting for in rural counties over the years, and I talked to him about that. Mm-hmm. So he said that that's fine. I've talked to a couple people individually. I've gotten a couple responses back via the email, but some of the comments were just as you said. We fought this battle and we didn't win this battle. It was a tough battle all the way around. Not that we want to give it up or we don't want to give it up. I think it was Commissioner Porter mentioned some things about the dollars and cents of this wasn't as dramatic as they had once thought it was when you have to put sprinklers in the cost per foot. So we're running around trying to just get a feel for who wants to support it. If we do not support it as a delegation, I believe that bill will still go through possibly for Wycomico as a local bill.
Okay. And I mean, here locally, when the last time I went through, it was very divisive between our volunteers. It was split between the houses in terms of support, not support, and DES has issues with. So we got a lot of internal things here that are driving it to not jump in the fray on this. Just if it's, like I said, waste a lot of political clout for something we already know is probably DOA. That's all I'm saying.
Exactly.
I sponsored this bill 4 years ago, and it never got a public hearing. It was dead on that. At that time, it was dead on arrival, and we're 5 or 6 years into this. Mm-hmm. And I would anticipate exactly the same thing. So for all of us collectively, if it's going to be dead on arrival, I'm not sure that the juice is going to be worth the squeeze in regards to, making the fire service angry over a bill that's likely to never even get to see the light of day.
There's some additional history that's coming around that people are talking about, so that may play in your decision. But I would encourage you to look at it. It's not us saying we have to have this. That's not the intent. The intent is that we're trying to work better as a group, and if we can support stuff through our whole delegation, that's what we'd kind of like to try and push those bills.
Certainly vote for it if it comes up.
With that being said, honestly, I don't have a problem supporting that. I disagreed with that law ever since it's been out. So, I mean, I do believe that the rules, if you're out on a farm, if you're not serviced by public water, it is a hardship, and honestly, and I mean no ill will to volunteer fire service or any fire service, but if your house is out 6 miles off the main road, by the time they get there, there's a fire.
Becomes a controlled burn more than anything at that point.
And, you know, I understand it's to save lives, but in the same token, you know, I guess the statistics don't bear out the cost. So with that being said, does anybody here want to think about it and just let the delegation know later, and we'll make a decision?
Well, if you say you got new information, I'd like to see the new information before I was.
You know, I want to make a couple comments, and there may be more information coming, but there is a fire and EMS caucus in Annapolis, which I'm a member of, and I can tell you that all the professional firefighters, EMS, all these people have representatives at those meetings. They'll come out against this bill right out of the blocks. So, I mean, it's going to be an uphill battle. I understand the concern over on the shore, and I think that your point's valid, but this is not an issue of public, I mean, this is not about property. This is about saving lives for saving firefighter lives. That's what this is about, and that's the way they view it, and that's the way they're going to continue to view it. And it's going to be a hard sell to
And I don't have a
change
problem
it.
with that. I think that, as far as Delegate Aaron said, you know, showing support for Wycomico, because we'll need their support, and I think that this, you know, if this is important to them, I don't have a problem supporting that for them. You know, I agree. I don't think it's going to go anywhere either.
Well,
I
the
think
shore
it's-
is always taking this same position, and,
Right.
you know,
Right.
I would think they would still do that, but
Okay,
it's just, in reality, it's going to be a very tough.
understood. Yeah,
So-
I don't think it'll go anywhere either, so. Okay, let's move on to the local liquor laws.
Well, I was just going to add.
Oh, I'm sorry.
As we all know, I mean, this came about when they thought, they looked at all the homes being the same, all being on public water, all having the pressure, being able to
Right.
put this in place. And to some extent, if you're building a new home and you just have the actual cost of the sprinkler system itself, it might not have been a bad idea. But what we've seen over a number of years since it's been enacted is that, especially in the rural counties where the price of the homes are much lower than what we see on the eastern shore, or the western shore anyways, and the fact that they're on, you know, well, that they don't have the pressure, that the increased cost is what's made it unaffordable to get people into starter homes. And so we've seen this over and over again, that we've looked, and we thought that that was also a very important thing too. If people want to go in a home and they know it doesn't have a sprinkler system, that should be able to be their choice as well too. And Dorchester County has fought this, Caroline County has fought this, just because the costs have gone up so exponentially if you're not on public water. So we've looked at it before, and as these guys have said, there's always been one bill that's come up, a way of maybe kind of getting to the middle a little bit, is that a new builder would at least have to ask the potential buyer, would you want to pay X amount additional dollars to have a sprinkler system in a new home that's being built? And we got a little bit of traction with that, but as these guys have said, it's just a difficult bill to get through, but I think it's very important in the rural counties to be able to have this option.
Agreed. Okay, all right. Now we'll go to the local liquor laws. And as you can see, there's 5 of them, or 5 different topics, how you guys want to handle this. Remove stipulation that you can only have one financial interest in a license, you know, the first one. Review residency ownership provisions to hold a liquor license. The third one, remove provision that you must be 500 feet from any place of worship. Number 4, provide county commissioners authority to employ staff, the inspectors. And the 5th one is adjust food versus beverage sales provisions similar to Kent County. So these are the 5 that were, Joyce, I know you're, were these, yeah, go ahead, come on up. Were these requested by the liquor board, or are these just what you've been hearing grumblings, or any of these supported by the liquor board?
2 of those were the subject of meetings before the liquor board, that being the financial interest requirement and the one related to places of worship needing to be 500 feet from a place of.
Okay.
And we did support those 2. And the one about the
Ownership, residency? for the
See.
county?
I learned about the residency about 5 minutes ago, but I've done this long enough that I can address that issue if you'd like.
And we do have a letter of support from Business Queen Anne's about the residency and ownership to,
That's how I learned about it.
there you go. So,
That issue relates to the fact that in Queen Anne's County, and we'll talk about just restaurants for the moment because that seems to be the target of the letter. In Queen Anne's County, you have to be a resident of the county for 2 years in order to acquire a liquor license unless you're either incorporated or you set up a limited liability company, in which case you have to be a resident of the state of Maryland, but not necessarily Queen Anne's County. The problem area arises where, for example, if it's a corporation, at least 3 of the officers have to be applicants, and each of those applicants has to own at least 15% of the ownership, whether it be stock ownership or membership ownership in an LLC. So when they talk about a P.F. Chang's or an Applebee's or a Carrabba's, whatever, you're not going to have 45% of the ownership in any of those companies residents of the state of Maryland. I mean, so that's the target, is this percentage ownership requirement. If you're talking about, of course, Class B or your restaurant and hotel licenses, if you talk about your packaged goods stores, your Class A licenses, then that doesn't really address the applicant as much as it does 75% of the ownership in the company has to be in a Queen Anne's County resident. I haven't heard anybody really address the package store element, but
Okay.
that's the other
and that's not
percentage
on there,
ownership.
so we'll leave that one alone.
We'll
Yeah.
go down that
Yeah,
road.
we'll leave that one alone.
Okay.
We did discuss it in the meeting today, and one of the things that I had mentioned was that even with our statutes that are specific to us, there's still the state hurdle of 4-102, 103, 104, and 105, which also requires having lived, the applicant has to have lived in the jurisdiction for 2 years, the jurisdiction or municipality for 2 years. So my suggestion, if somebody was listening at the meeting today, nobody was there regarding this, but was that if they want to identify a discrete statute that they want changed and tell you what the changes are, it would probably be a lot easier to get the process started. That being said, I think you're going to have a whole lot of business owners here who haven't been happy about this in the past, and, you know, I think it has been tried before, hasn't it?
Well, I think it was Commissioner Bucky, brought this up a couple of years ago, and it never really went anywhere. I think he had me appear when they had the Dunkin' Donuts hearing. I don't think Dunkin' Donuts has a liquor license. I have a feeling that was more about getting the word out than it was about Dunkin' Donuts acquiring a liquor license. But yeah, it's been an issue, and it's been out there, and it's a tough call.
Are all those statutes you named, Joyce, would all those have to be changed in some way, or is there a specific one that addresses the percentage of ownership in the jurisdiction?
The percentage of ownership is a Queen Anne's County section. The residency requirement
Or the
is
residency,
more
yeah.
of a, the residency requirement is more of a global. I mean, that's more of what's called Title IV question, not a Title 27, 27 being Queen Anne's County and 4 being the general provisions. So we really, I mean, my suggestion would be is us meet with Business Queen Anne, find out really what they're targeting, and then we try to come up with a solution. That would be my recommendation.
For all of them or just the residency one? You're just referring to the
Well, if
residency?
it's more than, I mean, their concern is they want to have Applebee's, Outbacks, P.F. Chang's, whatever
Well, at
I
least the
have to-
opportunity for some
Sometimes
other-
they're focusing on one thing, and I might say, well, you also have to, as,
Right.
Joyce just pointed out, there might be other sections we have to address, and,
Okay. Well, I guess, okay, well, to our delegation then, so for the first one, and definitely the fourth one, which is, the first one is the financial interest in a license where you can have more than one.
that's different.
500 feet came from the liquor board.
No, I understand that, but I'm gonna just, the stipulation, you can only have one financial interest in a license. How does that work for the rest of the state, in the, I mean, Kent County?
It's not, that's a big issue because of some things other than what you want to address, it addresses. There's some issues over in Montgomery County with package stores and what have you, and how that's being handled and how they're trying to reduce the competition. One guy wants to buy up 30 stores. That's been an issue in the past, and I don't know that that's something that everybody's going to say, gee, we got to support this right away. About the chain stores and all that stuff, those types of things I think we get through. And I think one of the pieces you hear about you all employing the staff, I think we just put that bill in a few years ago, how that we just changed that a couple of years ago on how that's all done. I think the the guy, you said something about your inspector. I think in the state, I think he actually works for the liquor board, but the liquor board doesn't have a budget for him. But I think he actually, in the state's paperwork and wording, he works for the liquor board, not
He answers to the liquor board, but
Yes.
the county pays him.
correct.
like
That's,
school-
that's
kinda
the
like
way
the
I
school
believe it.
system.
I mean, and again, this is me just touching and reading over stuff once I got this.
Right.
But I do see an uphill battle with the multiple names, multiple licenses.
Okay.
So with regard to the multiple licenses, it wouldn't be that this one person has a liquor license, has two liquor licenses. It would be that if Jeff and I were brother and sister, he could have a liquor license and I might have a interest in his business, but I'm not on the liquor license and I don't have the controlling interest. So that was the distinction that when business owners came to the liquor board and asked us, that was something that Montgomery County had actually tweaked the way they define controlling interest or business interest. So that was something that we had done to try and accommodate the request.
And what happened is, with the application has a statement in it made by the applicant that says, I don't have a financial interest in any other liquor establishment. In this case, the proponent of the legislation came to us and said, look, my father died. All of us have interest in other liquor establishments. We shouldn't have to divest our inheritance as a result of this provision. That's what happened. They as a family, they own a couple restaurants. There's a hotel involved, but that has a liquor license. So it's not possible for one of them to say that they go on the license and then he's got to have that ownership interest again. He goes on the license, he has to have the ownership interest. Now he's got to divest himself of these other ownership interests in these other entities. So that's why we tried to draft it in a fashion that it had to be a controlling interest. So if you have a minority interest, you can have a controlling interest in one and a minority interest in others, but you can't have a controlling interest in more than one.
And you wouldn't be on more than one license.
Correct.
And so if you take that financial interest in a liquor license or a business holding a liquor license to the extreme, if I rent property to a person that operates a liquor store, I have a financial interest in that business, even though I have nothing to do with the operation of that business, but I am drawing income from that business. So it would just clear up all of that.
So I guess, what is the time frame for introducing these bills? For instance, if we punt this back to the liquor board, have them hold some hearings on all 5 of these, get input, bring them to the commissioners, and so we can decide which ones we want to actually move forward.
Sometime in March.
Mid-January.
Mid-January? Okay.
We had the hearing on the financial interest one.
Okay, so
we've had that
the
hearing.
first one you have a hearing, I'd like to see you put all the rest of them on your agenda and, notify the public that they're going to be all discussed and, find remedies for which ones, just like you said, you might not need to tweak the whole thing, but just something small inside and let's get the public what they're looking for.
And I want to make sure that also before the hearing is that send specific notes to the EDC, so if they want to send somebody there, because the
Oh, yeah.
EDC should be looking at these things as
Right.
well for us.
Right.
Give us their input.
In number 5, you guys as a delegation got number 5 in and passed, so that bill already exists. That was, for lack of better words, I call it the Casanelli bill, because that was to allow your distilleries and your breweries to change that percentage so they could serve food there, because the percentage right now inhibits them from being able to serve food on site. I think it's 75-25, the way Queen Anne's is.
I can't remember. I mean, Senator Hershey and I, we had that one bill at one time that dealt with the food on the distillery.
Right.
I think it was for the gin distillery. That was a few years ago.
But you guys have already done one for Kent.
The one you're talking.
Last year.
Yeah.
It was one for Blackwater.
We did one for Blackwater when they first came out. We did the tours, and they wanted to have events and be able to have some type of food with
So
this.
that's
as
not
well.
a first for us.
Yeah.
I know we worked on that.
But what they did in Kent County took it a little bit, a step
Right.
further, and it
And I think that's what the breweries and the wineries, and we have another brewery breaking ground, we have another one coming. I think that's what they're looking at, to be able to, and I don't think we, as responsible people, want people going there and drinking and not having the ability to eat any food to go with that drink. So I think it is something we definitely got to look at.
So you want to piggyback off of?
I think that bill worked out fine. I've
Okay.
talked
If those numbers work for you,
Yeah,
that
I mean, it seems to work
hopefully
in
that'll
Kent,
just
so
be-
I don't know why we want to reinvent the wheel on it.
It'll be an add-on. That would be more our local bill than it is.
Since I only came with 3 and you have 5, I'm gonna.
Well, all 5 of them, I mean, if there's support for all 5, then I would imagine we would look at that and move forward with all 5.
Yeah, I mean, on the place of worship it's been an issue for years.
Correct.
Because, we got that 500-foot requirement. Legislature changed the law for us on Class Bs, so restaurants now can be within, that 500 feet. Didn't see any problem with being within that distance. I just have a problem with a place of worship anymore. When I started doing this 35 years ago, whatever, everything was denominational. I mean, you knew where the Catholic Church was. You knew where the Methodist Church was. Now with all the non-denominational, what's a place of worship? I don't even know what it is.
Right, define that.
I mean, any 2 people meet kind of a deal. So it's just, I just don't like the language in it. The other option there would be, instead of just taking it out, a real problem is, like Mothers of Sorrows, they come to us for 1-day licenses.
Right.
And we've always given them, but I just, I'm like, guys, it's supposed to be 500 feet away, they got it in the backyard.
Right. So again, that's why I think,
I'd like to
these are
clean that up
general
either.
comments that I think that if the liquor board takes this on and holds the hearings,
We did hold a hearing on the distance restriction requirement, and we modeled it. I mean, at one point, all of the counties had the church and school requirement, and then most of them got rid of it. We were only trying to get rid of the place of worship one because, as Mr. Thompson said, a church can sprout up anywhere, and we had an issue, I want to say, with Blackwater Distillery wanted to expand, and they couldn't expand because a church had opened up on their lot.
So they had to relocate. That's great. That just doesn't.
Yeah. So all the more reason, that's what I mean. So, if you come back with a recommendation to support all these and here's what we're supporting in actual, the legal terminology, then we can forward that on to the delegation and get it done.
Okay.
All right.
And then someone will supply Mr. Thompson with a list of all 5 of them.
I'll get them.
Oh, you don't have the same thing we have?
Well, I only proposed 2 of them, so, and then.
Right.
Third one I got handed 10 minutes ago.
We'll get you a copy.
Yeah, we'll get you a
They all
copy, so
work.
this way.
They'll
Get it all
understand.
right.
It all works. And what we'll do is we'll notify EDC and Business Community. And if they want to comment on any of them, that way they'll have notice in addition to. Now, Senator, what do you want us to do advertising-wise? Can we, at the liquor board level, just make it an agenda item and then have full-blown advertising, newspaper advertising at the county commissioner level?
We've always, our concern is that the commissioners make the final decision and they have the opportunity to hear input from all the stakeholders and citizens that way. So
I'd
however
like to
you.
keep the cost down a
Yeah,
little bit.
right, however you want to handle it at the local board
Okay,
level.
so we'll
but as
make it
long
an
as
agenda item and then
And then
you'll
we'll
do
make
the
it, we'll
advertising.
publicize it and bring it.
All right. Well, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, I don't know who asked for this one, so whoever did, please speak up as to the, what we're trying to accomplish here. Adjust the hotel tax, limited by state law. Currently, it is at 5%.
I have no idea how they got here.
Okay?
No
Is it
idea.
an old one that came from 1718 maybe?
No, I don't think so. That was just,
So adjusted by what?
that's what I mean. I don't know, I don't understand
So
what this
it's
is.
bringing in 500 or so thereabouts.
Okay.
So if we adjust it by 1%, there's 100. That's, at least that's the numbers you're dealing with.
Okay.
I have no recommendation.
Okay.
But this is just to change the top end limit, right? I'm assuming? So from 5 to 6. So it gives you the ability, it's enabling legislation, more or less. It's not,
Yeah.
you're not adjusting it, it's giving you the ability to, just like if they do something with the
So
income tax.
we're doing it at the current max that we're allowed to. We want to
At
change
5,
it.
correct.
Yeah.
So is that something we want to pursue? Having the ability, they do the legislation, so.
It's a good idea to have the
Yes.
ability.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you.
So that one, we will ask to move it from 5.
So you want us to raise taxes? So if you guys could go raise
We want you to
taxes,
give
that
us
would be great.
the ability, we want you to give us the right to do it.
Delegate Jacobs.
My colleagues will take care of that for you.
In all seriousness, though, I would be cautious about what you decide to do with giving yourself the ability to raise taxes with the Kerwin coming up this year. Because they are going to look at the counties
That's a good point.
to come back and say, hey,
It is.
here's this big bill, all kinds of money for their form of giving the best education that's possible. And they might be putting a pretty hefty price tag upon you guys.
And they've already talked about doing it with PPT and forcing counties that don't have personal property tax to institute
tax
personal
effort's a big
property
deal.
tax to make up money. So you know what, good point, Senator. I withdraw my support of that.
Just drop it.
They'll figure it out for
And he
you.
gets a line?
Yeah, they'll figure it out for you,
Yeah,
but
don't
I
misunderstand.
wouldn't be so eager to do something. I would
Good point.
kind of let it
That's a good point.
fall the way it does.
Well, that brings us to number 4.
That would have been me.
Okay.
That would have been me. We have Airbnbs popping up everywhere, and there are some other county jurisdictions, and I don't know off the top of my head exactly which ones that have already done something about this. And right now, your Airbnbs are paying a sales tax, and they're not paying that hotel tax that hotels are paying. So you can have somebody who's got 4, 5, or 6 properties that are Airbnbs, and all they're doing is paying a sales tax. So at least look into, well, again, that could just be something that we decide at a county level. If we want our Airbnbs to pay a hotel tax or whatever the equivalent term for it is.
I know this has been in our committee a number of times, and it's gone back and forth on what they've been able to do and who comes in. There's always a battle, especially when it comes down to Ocean City, because they would certainly like to see all the Airbnbs pay this hotel tax as well. There's also a number of us that might not believe that an Airbnb is a hotel. You know, when it comes to all the amenities that a hotel provides, a lot of times hotels provided tax breaks to get. So there's kind of a little bit to decide if that's something that you really want to impose on people that are coming in. But Bruce, do you recall what the final?
For clarity, I represent Expedia at the state level.
Right.
And I've been very involved in this issue. Last year, legislature passed a bill that went into law clarifying the state's right to collect the state hotel tax across the state for Airbnbs, Expedias, HomeAway, RPO, et cetera. A number of the jurisdictions, I've just been tracking it for Expedia, a number of the jurisdictions are similarly enacting local. Prince George, Baltimore City, is legislation pending in Anne Arundel County right now to do the same at the local level, because the bill that was passed last year does not include any localities or municipalities, any county.
So right now, Airbnbs are paying a state hotel tax.
Yeah, and also my client Expedia as well.
Right.
Is,
But they're paying
and,
the sales tax and the state hotel tax.
Exactly.
Right now, but not a
exactly.
local tax.
But not a local hotel tax.
Unless the local, either county or municipality enacts that. Is that
But a
right?
part of the issue, and I'm just discussing it, I'm not saying what you all should do what you want to do. But for example, in Annapolis, and it's pending before the city council, in order to collect the local city tax, they really don't know what's out there in their jurisdiction. So part of their legislation is to require anyone that's going to run an Airbnb to get a license, so that they're known. And my client's cooperating with that. We are not opposed to any of this. I'm just saying that generally. I don't want anyone to think that I'm speaking contrary to this or what have you. But to the extent you want to collect the local tax, I think respectfully the first thing you need to know is who's out there to collect it from, and have a registry of that. What they're doing in Annapolis, what they're doing in other jurisdictions already, is they've required someone to get a license. Not very expensive, but to get a license so that they're known. But my client, and I can only speak for Expedia, but my client is committed, and they are doing it in these jurisdictions, is they're cooperating with the locals, so that if someone wants to use Expedia, they have to give their local number and everything. And if they don't have a local number, we're not going to take their listing. Or if they have a local number and for some reason a locality has revoked it for whatever reason, we will not further honor listings. We are working with the various levels of government. So I'm presuming that here in Queen Anne's County, you don't have a basic structure of knowing, who's out there running an Airbnb or really a short-term rental is really what they're called. And I think to effectively if you don't mind my saying, to effectively collect a tax locally, you need to know who's out there so that you can govern it, monitor it. I know my client would cooperate, as I indicated, on that end.
Right.
So maybe what
So-
we do is we'll hold off.
Correct.
And find out, see if John could find out, because I know the Airbnbs pay the sales tax for the Airbnb owner. So they, as a representative, let's just say you're listing your home with Airbnb, they actually pay the sales tax.
They collect it.
They collect it,
Well,
and then they pay it.
It's built into their...
Right,
yeah.
so there's a way to track who the Airbnbs are, at least registered with the state, because they're paying the state tax. So we could perhaps maybe get our finance director to see if he can't find out
If I
exactly
can
how
help,
many
I'm
are
very
operating in our
familiar
county.
with this subject area, as the senator intimated. If I can help in any way, I'd be happy to do so.
So real quick, Bruce, to clarify, so the state law, the state
That was
tax-
passed last year.
Right, but did that have an enabling component in it for the counties or
No,
not?
there was an effort made,
So it's just at the state level?
right,
no-
there was an effort made by MACO, I'm not being critical, and municipalities, and that was not added to the bill. No.
Okay,
There
so-
was opposition.
Yes.
Well, I mean, obviously, it's
Extreme.
not in there.
So I got Amy's here in the room, and I've just got a question because this is a problem throughout the district. You know, they pop up everywhere, and so there's always the question of the zoning component. I mean, how do you establish the fact that
It's another piece of it.
today, and I mean, you take say a quiet neighborhood that someone buys a home, they're a part-time owner and they decide, hey, you know, I'm going to make this an Airbnb. They just do it. I mean, how does that play out from a zoning standpoint? Maybe Amy can help with it.
I'll ask that. Like, I think you guys studied this, right? She's new, recently.
She's experienced in
She
this
is.
stuff.
You can come on down, Amy. So, Mike Wisnowski, Director of Planning and Zoning and Permitting in Queen Anne's County. Amy Mordock, former Director of Kent County Planning and Zoning, and now one of our principal planners. We do not regulate rentals, period. There was a lot of discussion over the last 5 years of whether or not we should get involved with that when Airbnb and the others started to pop up in our county. We are a complaint-driven department, meaning we don't really know about rentals unless someone complains and there's a party and they ask, what can we do about that? If they're zoned for single-family residential and they happen to have an event, it's impossible, as you probably know, to distinguish between they're having a party with a family or they've rented their house for an event. So to date, we just do not regulate that. If they're single-family detached residential and it's zoned for it, that it's accepted that way. And you're right, it's like unintended consequences. If we decide to regulate it, then we have to look at zoning, we have to look at registration and licensing to get an understanding of how many we have. And you know, we are a vacation destination, so there are a fair amount, but an exact number, I don't know. And Amy, do you want to put forth anything from Kent in your experience?
Well, I wouldn't want to speak on behalf of Kent at this point, but I know that from a zoning perspective, the issue with regulating a bed and breakfast is the only comparable zoning provision that really captures an Airbnb. And some operators truly are operating a bed and breakfast where they do live on site and they have a cottage on their property and they rent it out through Airbnb. Traditionally, though, Airbnb is a totally different beast because the property owner tends not to be present, and that is a completely different experience from a home occupation. So that's where a lot of jurisdictions haven't opened that can of worms at all, because it does become a matter of rezoning comprehensively.
So the big deal is it's growing like crazy, and there's a lot of concern, especially from businesses that are paying hotel tax. Hey, these guys are renting these houses all over town, they're not paying any hotel tax, this isn't right. And that's starting to really surface. So, you know, I'm just trying to understand all the components. So what you're saying, you don't regulate it, so therefore it's complaint driven. But if you have a sign out front of your house that was in a residential neighborhood, now it says, Sailor's Crossing. And it gets rented and it started having parties there. Would that go into a new category from a complaint standpoint? Because it would be, that it has become, for instance, that type of scenario has become an Airbnb.
That's a difficult question, because if it comes to our attention, we send someone out and determine that if they're within the confines of our ordinances and our laws, meaning they can rent the property, they can have a party. We can't regulate that. So unless there's some type of violation, a noise violation, or something of that nature, they're permitted to do what they're doing. We just don't regulate that.
Okay.
There was another component to that where the people that are doing this currently, it might be one of you all that has a place that you've been renting out. Now you're regulating it. Now you're putting criteria on it. Zoning gets involved, licenses get involved. You're going to have stipulations to maintain that license. And people came in and said, geez, all I was doing was making a couple dollars. And we sit back and say, well, that's all the hotel started out doing too. So there's a lot. I mean, you'll find some resistance to it when you come out there. I got probably a stack of letters from people in Annapolis that says, oh, I had no harm, no foul. We only stay there. We rent it out for this little bit of period. Now you're making me get licenses, and this is one I think people always sit back. You're going to regulate me. I get offended. We did that with Uber. Now we're going to do it with this, and it's a legitimate thing to do because people are making money off of it. But it is still, you'll meet some resistance with it.
Well, it's definitely going to be something we're going to have to hold and just figure. I mean, there's just too many variables and too
I mean,
many
if you were to
holes in
go,
this.
if you were to go to Airbnb's website and put in a zip code or an area code of an area where you want to visit for a week, and it pops up and lists all these homes in our community that are Airbnbs, registered with Airbnb. So you, at that point, you book the house for a week or however long you want it in wherever here in Queen Anne's County their Airbnb is registered. So I wanted to look at it because as the delegate said, they are popping up more and more each year. You're seeing more and more of them. And there's that component that there are people in neighborhoods that are saying, wait a minute, hold on a second. Someone bought this house in my community and now it's an Airbnb, and we have, people coming and going at all hours of the night. And it's just, again, at some point, there's got to be some checks and balances, or this is just going to run rampant. And that's part of the reason why I brought it up, for that point, and the fact that you've got hotel owners that are paying a hotel tax, and why shouldn't these folks be either, because they're doing the same thing.
Well, I think this something needs to be reverted back to the EDC for some input, and then possibly to the Planning Commission to see what we want to do with this. So I think that's enough discussion on it,
and we'll get you all the information that we had in the last year or so.
Because we're going to run short on time, and so I want to. The tip is self-explanatory. I think everybody understands what we need here for the. We're left off the list of the rest of the counties, so that's pretty much straightforward. Not a problem to get that taken care of through legislation. I'm going to skip broadband just for a minute and just hit on some of these ones I think we can get through. Restrict sewer tank pump outs from boats in open water. I personally have seen boats pumping out. I went up and took samples full of E. coli, and this is in the Wye River. And, I know Anne Arundel County is trying to do something to that nature. I don't know what Talbot, Caroline, or Kent County feel about this, but, every marina, everywhere you can buy gasoline, almost everywhere you can buy gasoline, there's a pump out. Pump outs are free. And for some of these larger boats to just sit over here, spend the night in the Wye River, and the next day they get up, and the minute they go to leave, they pump everything out of their tanks. And I can show you pictures and everything else right across from your house.
That's why I
took samples.
I actually
like
thought,
Baltimore.
Yeah.
I thought that was a DNR regulation. They had lockouts on your pump out. I thought-
DNR allows these pump outs, but they're supposed to have on board ultraviolet, something to kill the bacteria. Well, maybe they do, maybe they're not working, but my point is, why would you do that anyways? Kill the bacteria or not, why not just go back to your marina, pump it out? And I just think it's easier. So
So how do you catch them doing it?
Well, enforcement will be difficult. And like I say with anything, 85% of the people will be law abiding.
Right.
There'll be that 15% that'll break it, but to reduce this by 85% will be huge. So it's just something, we need to start that ball. So, I'm more than happy to come over and testify, bring my little pictures and everything else, but, I've talked briefly to some of the, Kent County Council and same with Talbot County about this and got some feeling, and we even talked to Jeannie Hadaway, and she said she'd get back to us to set a meeting up, and we haven't heard from her. So that's just an easy one to get through. The derelict boats from waterways. We're having an issue there with DNR, and with the county gets a boat, it's pulled up, somebody abandons a boat in one of our marinas, and we don't own the water, the boat sits there, how do we get rid of it?
Just call one of us.
Yeah,
Excuse me?
If you're one of us, I've had 4 or 5 of those over the last couple of years where I've called DNR and they've been right on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right on it. I mean, I understand you might.
Well, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get James, who handles our waterways and parks, to write out a letter specifically what they're looking for, and we'll forward that to you to see what we can do with that. Another one, and this is one that's close to all of our hearts, we want to establish local authority to close state highway ramps from 50 onto Maryland 18 and/or work with SHA, to expand off-ramp restrictions. We think this is going to have to be something that comes from legislation.
I've already got the legislation almost written.
Beautiful.
So
Thank you.
We've taken that from
Okay,
you.
so
We've
you-
all talked about this
Excellent.
100 times.
Okay, so we don't need to talk about that. We're moving forward. The brag. We briefly discussed the brag and the new proposed process for that, to enlist new members. Every quarter, we don't get to put anybody on there. They don't want politicians on there unless, I guess you can apply for it yourself, but, to me, it's just a whitewashing, so.
I'm drafting legislation now.
Thank you.
And Jim Ports will know
Okay.
about it when he comes in today.
Excellent. So, the CTE bill, 513, we support that 100%, so roll on with that. You guys do a great job with that, and looking forward to seeing that get through. Okay, the preemption. The state preemption, and this is going back to the solar, and the small cell 5G. We are very concerned with that and what's going to happen with where we've already zoned for solar. We've already put in all these regulations only for the state and/or this new committee to come along and say, it doesn't matter, we're going to triple the amount of solar that goes here. I would like to see each county have to bear the same amount of solar versus trying to push everything on the eastern shore and take up our farmland. Not to mention the fact that we've talked in the past about the solar goes up on thousands of acres, we get no WIP credits for no nitrogen, phosphorus, or runoff. It seems like, no matter what, the screws get turned to us, and we again, that's an issue.
So I'll just add, we just had a energy briefing in finance 2 weeks ago, and one of the most telling presentations that they had was a map of the state, and it showed either the deployment of solar or the number of projects in the queue for solar, utility scale solar projects throughout the state. Caroline and Queen Anne's County were the 2 highest of the over 2,000 megawatt hours that were either deployed or in the queue. Montgomery County had 0.
Right. There you
Nothing.
go.
So where we're seeing this legislation come from that just increased the carve out of solar from 2.5 to 14.5 and actually to 5.5% this year itself, the legislators that pushed through that bill are not holding up their end of the bargain. And I called them out on it, and the solar industry as well too. I've talked to my chairman about it as well too. We've got to find out some way that either they hold up their end of the bargain or we find some way to be compensated or taken care of for using our farmland or contiguous farmland in order to meet these energy goals. So that's in the process. I'm not sure what this is going to look like. I actually talked to the governor's policy director as well about this, because the governor's looking at possibly introducing energy-related legislation this year as well. But we've got to find out some balance there, because you're right. It's not fair that the developers can come in and find this parcel of land, go to the Public Service Commission. The
Right.
Public Service Commission feels that they've got this mandate from the General Assembly to go do it, so they go and approve it. Now, there was just a case that was approved, came down from the Court of Appeals,
Washington County.
Washington County case, so you're aware of that.
And real quick, not to interrupt.
Go ahead,
but
please.
That's why preemption is in the quotes, because it's not, we're not looking at just the solar case and the Montgomery County case on the pesticides as preemption, but
Any preemption.
any preemption. We'd rather have the legislature decide what the law is going to be rather than the courts come back after we've taken a lot of hours and a lot of time to create stuff here, to have the state come back in a lawsuit and say, oh yeah, everything you have is no good anymore. So just in general, we'd like to see the legislature decide the laws and not have to have the courts make decisions.
We
on it.
agree. We agree with that.
So,
Good. All right, we're going to go back to the broadband, and Jack, I'm going to let you go ahead and go
okay,
through these real quick.
so I think you guys are aware of the top tank because so that's a no-brainer. That'll certainly help North Queen Anne's County and actually pretty much the county and whole Eastern Shore, really. So that's a great initiative.
Let me just say, it's not a no-brainer, but, I mean,
Well, you're probably going to get resistance from the big boys, but
well, let me
in
just say,
terms of the right-of-ways and all, I think
it's a broader bill. I just got a draft of the bill.
Okay.
So I've submitted that to get drafted into final format. But what Chop Tank is looking to do as well is what they are calling member regulation. So what they want to do, because they're a co-op, is to be able to, in a sense, set their own rates without having to go to the Public Service Commission. And the reason of that is rate modification hearings are very expensive. So because they are owned and operated by all their members, they feel that their members should be able to make the decisions on what their rates cost, and they don't need to do
If
that.
they pay
So-
more, they get the money back anyhow in rebates, so.
So
Similar to what they do
that's
on the power side, really.
Right, that's the broader part of the bill.
Right.
If we are able to do that, then there's a part of that will allow them to use, their economies of scale, and they think they said that they have about 650 miles of middle fiber that's already out there. And if they're able to do that, how would we set up Chop Tank to also be a provider of broadband services? So that's what the rest of the bill is going to be. So like I said, I think it's a great idea. Like I said, that's why I'm going to put the bill in. It needs to be tweaked some, but I think it's one of the best ideas that we've had lately.
Absolutely.
That's going to
Verizon
provide.
and Comcast can't do it. They've had plenty of
And
time
even
to
if
do
they
it.
don't deploy the service on there, to
Right.
have the asset in the ground or over the head and to the location, home, business, whatever,
Correct.
anybody can light it up. And if you talk to any of the suppliers, they tell you, if we had fiber there, we'd light it up because then they're getting paid for it.
And we feel at some point in time, they've had every opportunity to go out and do this,
Sure.
and they haven't. And they
Absolutely.
say that the cost of it, so this might be the way to get it.
So that speaks to the next one, which is we've been approached about in certain areas to deploy the fiber optic broadband expansions to large swaths to be able to levy special benefit for that area. Because we have people that say, well, we'll pay extra to get it here. But we don't have that ability right now to do we just recently had a project that it would have been about $800,000 to deploy to about 275 homes. We didn't have the cash in the bank to go do that at that time, but if we were able to levy the special benefit, we could have released that project. And we had gotten $100,000 from the state for that project, but we had to turn it back because it wasn't financially feasible for the county at the time. So if we had the ability to take those single projects, again, we would have affected 250-some houses that are unserved right now. So that would have been a big win, but.
I think this is what we just did in Cecil County last year, right? Okay. Cecil County, we narrowed it down to just broadband expansion.
Right, and then that's all we're asking for, just
Okay,
broadband.
and
That's-
not necessarily sewer or anything
just
else, but
broadband.
we can,
And then the last one, I know this has been discussed ad nauseum, both at the State Broadband Task Force and elsewhere, and it didn't seem to me like they were getting any headway, but maybe I guess if we keep having a conversation, possibly some of these restricted lines could be freed up for deployment where possible, I guess. So that's more of a question than legislation. I don't think you're going to get anybody to sign off on that, but.
yeah, not aware of that.
So I'm going to quickly just run through both 2018, 2019 initiatives and just touch on them to see if we can, maybe get an update or what's going on. I'm going to start in reverse with 19. We actually, we know about the highway user revenue. We don't need that. Observation beds at Queen Anne's County, or Queen Anne's Emergency Center. I know that we've met, and I know that the hospital's trying to get the beds. Is there anything that needs to happen from the legislative or from your side to keep moving forward with those observation beds, saving our units from going across that bridge? Is there anything you can think of that we're missing or not doing that needs to be done? And that's a question that doesn't need to be answered right this minute. Just want to just put that on the radar.
We'll get an update from Shore
Okay,
Regional.
great, thanks. The cores, we got through, thank you very much. The other one was insurance to cover the long-term rehab for drug addiction, and that's been in both years, and I don't even know if that honestly comes from the state or from the feds, but you know, the biggest problem when people keep talking about, you know, the opioid addictions is it's a long-term rehab. It's 6 months to a year, and none of the insurance companies, almost none of the insurance companies cover that, and they don't cover it because they're not forced to cover it. So I don't know where that comes from. I don't know if that comes through our state or through our federal legislators, but you know, that's something I think we'd like to address that. Dealing with the traffic, we already know about that. The one that's low-hanging fruit here, fishing restrictions, fines on state-owned bridges. We have that problem still at the Kent Narrows, people going on the bridge itself and fishing when there's traffic underneath, and there's just no fines. So if there's no fines, it doesn't do the sheriff any good. He just go away, you know. So there's no teeth to it. So there's something we'd like to see, if at all possible, some sort of legislation that puts a fine on trespassing on state bridges where it's actually unsafe. The landfill one, you know, I know that's still a discussion. So I guess that's really about it. Does anybody have anything they want to add to this? I know we're running a little behind here. Anybody? Chris, Steve, Phil?
Nope.
How about you guys? Anything you want to? Okay. We're good?
All right.
Thank you very much. Margie, let's open the door.
Bring in the good
Let the masses flood in.